Friends, Greg Kokel here, Stand to Reason, and welcome to our show. This is our second actual show of our 30th anniversary week, I guess, although it's all the same to me, which means our next callers will be our first 30th anniversary callers. So let's just get right to them. And in Naperville, Illinois, Tim. Welcome to the show, Tim.
Hi, Greg.
Hey.
How are you?
Good. Hey, by the way, there is a big church in Naperville that I have taught at twice. It's a big, giant thing with a big stage and really big worship group and everything. Do you have any idea what the name of that church is?
Well, if it's the one I'm thinking of, I've actually seen you speak there twice, and it's actually in St. Charles. It's called Christ Community Church.
Okay, I think you're right. Christ Community. Okay, yeah, and I have spoken there twice. And do you remember one time when I was there, did they have an artist that did some really amazing thing with sand, and then it's projected up on a screen? Does that ring a bell to you? Because I thought there was a thing there. Okay.
Yeah, I can't remember that part.
Okay, I think it was St. Charles and Christ Community, and there was some question. They actually did a little caricature of me that they had sitting up. Yeah, okay, there we go. All right. We have a picture of that, but we didn't know where it came from. Well, I knew in general, but I didn't know specifically. And thank you. I can't believe it, Tim. You gave me the answer, Christ Community Church. Amy, could you make a note of that? Christ Community Church in St. Charles, Illinois. That's where that visage came, that effigy or whatever they made of me. I think that like Mark Mittelberg also was part of that series, and they made one for him too. There was another one, I can't remember who it was, but
the other that was exactly where that was.
Okay, great. Bingo. We pinpointed it. Oh, super. All right.
All right.
Thank you, Tim. What's on your mind?
Okay, so I ran across this challenge online on a discussion, and I'll just read it to you, and then you can respond.
Okay.
So the person says, quote, "Here's a legitimate question for Christians. Who told you you need someone to save you? Why do you feel that way? If in any other relationship someone told you that no matter what you do, no matter how hard you try, you'll still never be enough and you need them to save you, you would hopefully run away from that. After leaving Christianity, I'm not going to lie, from the outside looking in, it appears to me that Christianity is one of the most successful mind control organizations of all time." Unquote.
All right, I'll tell you why I'm chuckling. Here's a guy that just got up and left. Apparently his mind wasn't being controlled. We just did a conference. We just did a conference with six realities in the season we just ended weekend before last now, and it was about deconstruction and deconversion. And we're hearing from all these people who have deconstructed their faith and they deconverted. Wait a minute, I thought all these people are brainwashed and mind controlled. How is it that they so easily walk away? You know?
Right, yeah, good
so
point.
there are lots and lots of people who apostatize or leave the faith. You can call it whatever you want. So I think the mind control language is a bit strong.
Okay.
But if one tells you, here is the way it is, here is the way reality is structured. So we have a story of reality that we get from Christianity that includes the nature of human sin, the nature of human guilt, and the solution to that, which is forgiveness, okay? Then you have a competing story. And the competing story says there is no guilt, and therefore there is no need for forgiveness, and there is no God telling you what to do, okay? So why is the first story called mind control, but the second story is not mind control? Okay, there's a question I have. All right. Well, I know the reason, because the second story that is not mind control is the questioner's own story. And they think they're holding their view on their own, not because they've been mind controlled. Now, I have no doubt that there are people who indoctrinate, and that's probably a better word to use, because I actually don't think mind control or certainly brainwashing even exists. There's no such thing as brainwashing. They tried that; it didn't work. But
Yeah.
you can, and unless people are using that word in a very flimsy fashion as a synonym for indoctrination. But indoctrination, people who are indoctrinated one way can, by examining the truth claims and the alternate evidence, believe something else and change their views. It happens all the time and in both directions. So my question would be, why do you call one the mind control, one claim about reality, and then another claim about reality, which, by the way, is much more appealing, right?
Yeah.
Here, you're indoctrinating people, you're mind control, you're telling them they're fallen. Well, wait a minute, why would anybody want to believe that? You're telling them they're not. Which one is more appealing? I'm not asking which one is more true, I'm just asking which one is more appealing. Which would be the one that people would naturally tend to gravitate towards if somebody was promoting it? Well, they would naturally gravitate towards the one who says, no, there is no sin, there is no guilt, you don't need to be saved. And this is why multitudes have gravitated for that. So it's hard. It's hard to buy the notion that people are being mind controlled by being told something they do not like when they have an option to believe something that is much more appealing. Okay?
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I don't understand mind control. Now, you might say, well, it's indoctrination. They're only getting one side. Well, that certainly isn't true in this country. All right? If you're talking about American Christians, that isn't true. All they have to do is flip the TV on, and, and everybody watches TV, lots of it. And they're going to get another view that is constantly fed to them. So it isn't like this is a compound where Christians are isolated and fed this falsehood, okay? If somebody told me, and this was the illustration he gave, in any other relationship, if you were told that that you were lost and you needed to be saved by this individual, you'd walk away. Sure, I presumably, unless that individual was a doctor who was an oncologist and he just done a close examination of your body and said, unless you believe what I tell you and do what I tell you to do as an antidote, you're going to die. That kind of situation happens all the time.
Hmm.
And and medicine is an example of that. So the real question is whether the assessment is accurate. I think this mind control language is rhetoric. The fact is, people walk away all the time, and they don't seem to be controlled by it. Certainly not this questioner who used to be some kind of Christian, this challenger, and what they walk away to seems to be much more individually appealing than what Christianity has offered. So why is that people are staying with Christianity? And I think one reason they do is because the claim makes sense to them. Now, probably 15 years ago, I lectured at Berkeley. And Friday night, I talked about relativism, just doing a philosophical assessment of moral relativism. I came to the conclusion, by making my case, that moral relativism is false. There actually are objective, real moral obligations that apply to human beings. But we also know, guess what? We don't do those things that we're supposed to do. And by the way, this is pretty much a universal acknowledgement. Doesn't matter who you are, where you are, or when you lived, everybody knows something is wrong with the world. That's the problem of evil. And they also know that the thing that's wrong with the world is other human beings, largely, of which they are a member of that group. And so, therefore, something's wrong with them. And when I address this to the audience, that if relativism is false, then some form of moral realism or moral objectivism is true, that explains our feelings about ourselves because we don't what's the word? We don't match up, or we don't. Now I'm lost the word, but we don't measure up. That's what I was after. We don't measure
Right.
up. The fact that we don't measure up, everyone is aware of. No religious person has to tell you that. And this is why we feel guilt. And this is what I was talking to the group about. Actually, they told me, I didn't tell them. What is the name that we use to describe the feeling we have of this, of the fact that we don't measure up? Guilt, guilt, guilt. So people say, yeah, guilt. That's right. We feel guilty. Why? This is universal. No religious person has to tell you this. What you have to be told is by a non-religious person that you are guilty. You do not have to be told by a religious person. Wait, did I say you have to be told by a non-religious person that you're not guilty? You do not have to be told by a religious person that you are guilty. The natural frame of mind people have is that they are guilty, and that's why they feel guilt. You feel guilty because you are guilty. Okay, so it isn't like people have to be brainwashed to think they have failed morally in some sense. Okay, so that makes no sense to me. I think when people are appealed to by Christianity based on moral guilt, they are not being talked into feeling guilty, but rather the Christian is speaking to something the other person is already aware of. You already know this. And here I was at Cal, for goodness sake. Berserkly, right? And people are nodding their heads. And I said, the answer to guilt is not denial. That's what the atheist in this thing you're referring to here is. That's what the atheist is offering, denial. Okay? The answer to guilt is forgiveness. So if you feel guilty and you're aware that you ought to be punished for something you did wrong, and it might be a different list of things by one person than the Christian person. Nevertheless, I'm not even talking to the category of wrong things. I'm just talking about the awareness of doing something that's actually wrong, objectively wrong. That's all I'm talking about. And we don't even have to fill in the blanks as to what is sin and what isn't sin. We all know that some things are sin, and we've done them. Now what? Now we're guilty. Okay, now what? And what the Christian says is, forgiveness is available to you. Are you interested in a pardon? That's all we're saying. It doesn't sound like mind control. We're dealing with something that the person is already aware that they need. Forgiveness. And we're offering that to them, free of charge. But where's the mind control?
Yeah.
And you know as well as I do that people are not like prone to believe what we have to say. They're not going to accept the package. Even though they know they're guilty, they're not prone to say, okay, let me join up. I'm going to join up your group. No, they resist it. We understand why. But it isn't like you have all of these poor people who can't think for themselves and they're mindlessly falling into this mind control trap that tells them they need to believe things they don't want to believe anyway, the way is being offered to them. They know they're guilty, but it's much better, more satisfying to say, you're not really guilty. Culture just put that on you. Christian put that on you. You're just fine. Live your truth. Okay? That's much more appealing. The relativist message.
Yeah.
You see
well, that's what I was thinking, is that you could almost flip this around and say it's the world that's brainwashing or, mind controlling people into believing, telling them everything they want to hear, and you're good enough. You don't need to be saved. There's nothing wrong with you.
Sure.
You're a good person. All of that kind of stuff, and telling them what they want to hear. And
exactly. It's exactly my point. But I wouldn't use mind control and words, and I wouldn't use brainwash. I would just use indoctrination.
Yeah.
Why doesn't the same charge apply to the world, for one?
Mm-hmm.
And they say, well, because we're not doing that. Wait a minute. You're just saying that this thing that Christianity claims about the individual is not true, that the individual is not guilty and does not need forgiveness. Now, that is a very strong point of view, and it is very appealing. People are going to be drawn to that because it's appealing. Okay? Mm-hmm. And by the way, I'm not faulting them for doing that. if that's what they believe. But now they're calling this other message that is not attractive and appealing as a mind control thing when people reject it all the time. And even people who are grown up with it walk away from it. Pretty lousy mind control. But the real question is the view true? Are we guilty? And I think when people stop and pause and think, and this is what I was addressing when I was talking to the group in Berkeley, when they stop and think about it, they realize, you know what? I do feel guilty. And maybe I feel guilty because I am guilty. Because when I think about it, I've done some things that aren't right.
Mm-hmm.
So that isn't mind control. That is a sober self-assessment that seems to match up with the claims of Christianity about reality. And if the claim about reality matches up to reality, that is the classic definition of truth. Now the question is, what do you do about it? That's it. So what do you do? Now you are guilty. Now what? If you're guilty before a lawmaker for breaking the law, you're in the dock. This is not good news because now the gavel's going to fall. Are you interested in a pardon? The pardon is available. That's it. In fact, that's the way I communicate it, even to secular audiences, just the way I did. I notice I don't have a lot of religious mumbo jumbo in there. I'm just saying it the way it is.
Right.
So that would be my response. Make sense?
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Good.
All right, Tim in Naperville, thanks for the help with St. Charles, the Christ Community Church in St. Charles. That was great.
Yeah, great. Thanks for your help, Greg.
All right, buddy. Bye-bye now.
All right. Bye.
All right, let's take, I'm looking, we got some people stacking up here. Let's just go to Leland in Goodyear, Arizona. And we've talked to Leland recently, I think, because you're right there by where Robbie Lashua lives. So, I got to push your button. Wait a minute. It doesn't happen by magic. All right, Leland in Goodyear.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the show. You are the same person we talked to before, right?
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, you got to push my buttons to find that out, though.
Yeah, that's right. I've only been doing this for 33 years, so all right. What's up?
Yeah. Recently I had a discussion with someone who I believe is a sister in Christ, does believe that she can only be saved by the blood of Christ and believes in all the essentials of the faith. But she also, I offered her a book, Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah.
And her response was, oh, no, I don't read those books because I don't think that really happened to the Jews. And,
wait. Let me just be clear. She's a Holocaust denier. Is that what you're saying?
Not just a Holocaust denier, yeah.
I know it goes further than that, but that's the first step right now. She denies the Holocaust. Really?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
And she said, her dad was in Signal Corps. She's black. And she says that he visited one of the camps and he didn't see very many Jews, just Poles and others. But so that affirmed.
Wait. He visited the camps when? As a visitor to the camp that was now an archive, so to speak?
No, but she's done that. But no, he was in Signal Corps in World War II.
Oh, and he didn't see many Jews?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there were lots of people that were non-Jews that were in camps. There were 6 million Jews that died, but 6 million Gentiles died too.
Yeah, I told her I used that approach too, but she doesn't think very many Jews died in the camps at all.
Okay. Well, so let me ask another question though. There were 6 death camps. Okay, Sobibor, Majdanek, Auschwitz. I forget the other 3. Chelmo, and there were 6 of them, and those were dedicated to destroying or eliminating the Jews. The other camps, they weren't so dedicated, though they had a lot of Jews in them, but they also had a lot of Gentiles. So a lot depends on which camp you go. But I actually am still. My dad was in the Signal Corps and didn't see so many Jews in the camp he went to. Therefore, 6 million Jews did not die in the camps.
Yeah, I did mention to her, that
okay, I just want to be clear on her thinking.
He visited, but yeah, she's there. But it also came out that part of the reason
thinks it was a big propaganda thing, and in fact, she thinks that the Jews are not the descendants of the Israelites.
Okay.
She thinks
Black
the Israelites
people are.
were black.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so a couple questions I had is, do you agree with me that, if she has, however problematic this view is, that if she has the other, the essentials of the faith, that at least she is saved?
Yeah, what she believes about Jesus matters more than what she believes about the diaspora Jews. Correct.
Okay. However, I'm just kind of wondering if this is not kind of a dangerous view to be having in your church, because, everything from, is it a misapplication of Scripture for me to quote where it says God basically said he will bless the people who bless his people, the Jews, and he will curse those who curse them.
That's of course, that's the Abrahamic covenant. There's a detail there. And so then there is an applicational question. Who are the Jews in view there? Those direct descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. and if they are not those Jews that we think of as Jews, but are actually black people, well, then there is an applicational concern. So let me first things first. Like I said, a person's salvation is dependent on what they believe about Jesus, not what they believe about the nature of the diaspora Jews. First of all,
okay.
Secondly, this idea. Good. This idea is called, I think it's called, well, I don't even know what it's called. Maybe Amy knows. But that it has gained popularity, and some of these groups are quite vigorous, all right? Everything that I know about this doctrine is that let me put it this way. There's nothing that commends this doctrine to me. There's a long history of the Jews being separated from Israel, diaspora spread around the country, and then having synagogues. You can track this through history. Okay, this is not difficult. All right.
That was my position.
And it is also not but it is also not difficult to make the case that millions of Jews died in the Holocaust. Okay.
Agreed.
And I've been to 2 camps. I've been to Auschwitz and Majdanek, 2 of the 6 that were extermination camps. Okay. And that was enough for me. In fact, right now at the Reagan Library, which is just, maybe 6 miles from my house, they're having a whole thing about Auschwitz. I want to go. But for someone to say that the Jews did not die, well, I don't. Maybe this is a trick question. Okay, maybe what she means is all of those people did get exterminated, but there weren't many black people, so therefore there weren't many Jews.
No, that's not what she meant.
Oh, that's not her view?
No, she believes that there weren't very many people that we would call Jews, and who call themselves Jews.
Well,
dying in the camps.
Well, the vast majority of the population of Jews in Europe, just as a matter of demographics, disappeared.
Where'd they go?
Okay, so now what does this tell you about your friend?
That she's definitely mistaken about this, but
well, what it tells me is that this person is not dealing in a reasonable way with the facts. Even as something as straightforward as the Holocaust. Okay.
Okay, but do you think this would be, like I said, any problem with letting her continue to come to our church? Worrying about, because by the way, we rent from a church that is it's the Maranatha Ethiopian and Eritrean church.
Right. Gotcha. Okay.
And she's not part of that. She's from Hawaii, and she's not Ethiopian or anything like that.
Right.
But I'm thinking, now we don't fellowship, directly with them. Because
you mean your church is a guest? It has a guest congregation of Ethiopians and Eritreans, right?
No.
No,
no,
okay, I'm
no.
confused.
We just rent space from them
That's what I
on
meant.
Saturday. I think I've
Oh, you
mentioned to you
rent.
before.
You're the guest. That's their church, and you guys rent space from them, right?
Yes.
Okay, but she doesn't go to their church. She goes to your church.
Yeah, she's
Okay.
just been visiting. She's going to go back to Hawaii sooner or later, but no.
Yeah, right. For the time being, right. Okay. Well, I don't think there's any problem with having her go to your church. I don't think any
Yeah,
disciplinary.
okay.
If that's her view, if she begins to campaign for her view, then I think you have to keep an eye on it and see if it's causing disruption. If it's causing
Okay.
disruption, then you have a problem. I have no difficulty with her telling other people this is what she believes. And I don't think contrary views should be just silenced kind of out of the gate. I mean, unless they're Arians and they're, Jehovah's Witnesses and LDS or whatever. And then you've got to make the distinction with your group that these people are a different religion. But she's bringing in an odd kind of angle into her Christianity. And this, just keep an eye on it. And if it turns out to be disruptive, that's when you'll have to address it, just like someone I addressed in the last hour. If I can't remember the issue now, but if it's disruptive,
Oh yeah, I remember that.
and it seemed to have been, in their case, disruptive, and so this is where there's a problem. But I don't. So that's it. I'm not in a position to give you a theological analysis of this particular group, which strikes me as strange and I think as dangerous, and things I've been experienced regarding them as they're pretty aggressive.
Yeah, she's not. So I think we're all right there.
She is not
to visit us.
She is aggressive in it.
No.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. Yeah.
Okay, but real quick. I mean, I don't know if you had more to say about that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just real quick question, completely off that subject. Are you guys going to post that sand painting of you so we can see it?
Or the documentary?
No, the sand painting that from Grace, or the church where you visited, they made a sand painting of you.
Oh, that. Oh, yeah. No, that it wasn't okay. First of all, they did not make a sand painting of me. They made a stand-up caricature painting. Okay, but I was just asking. I remember that the sand painting was a little demonstration that happened during the service, artistic, and I was just trying to make sure that it was the same church, because I thought I remembered that. But he gave.
Well, are you going to post that thing so we can look at it?
That's going to be posted somehow, because over this next year, our 30th year, anniversary year, there are plans to post different things in different places, but I don't have anything to do with that. I just know I saw this representation, and I was asked, well, what church did that come from? Who is the artist, so we can give proper credit? We know the church now, at least, Christ Community in St. Charles.
But I'll get to see it, and see what a caricature of Greg Kokel.
Yeah, it looks like me, kind of in a caricature form. So they did a pretty good job, but I don't know where it's going to be posted. So just stay alert on our website or whatever, and maybe you'll see it. All right, partner.
Thanks a lot, Greg, for being. I don't know if I listened to your first broadcast, but I've been listening to you. I'm pretty sure since at least 91 or 92.
Wow.
I don't know.
Well, that's pretty close. So, I started in February of 90. And in 91 or 92, it was not Stand to Reason. It was called Talk from the Heart, actually.
Else and, yeah.
All right.
I remember listening to you on K-Bright.
Yes, KBRT, right.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds good,
anyway,
Leland.
All right. Take care. God bless.
All right. Thank you, buddy. I appreciate your call. All right. Let's go to break, and we'll have more calls here on Stand to Reason when I get back. All right, that was a great conversation here. Let's see if we have some more. And going to New Jersey. Evan, welcome to the show.
Hey, Greg, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Yes, sir.
So, to be brief about my question, it concerns the relationship between reason and scripture. So let's say if the Bible, and I emphasize if, were to contradict the laws of reason, which one would take precedence? So, like, for example, if the Bible were to say something that contradicted the law of non-contradiction, how would a Christian wrap their mind around that? So some people I've seen say that the Trinity violates that law by saying, God is both God and not God, or the Father is both the Father, not the Father. And while I don't really believe it, and that's true, I still think it's an important issue to address.
Okay. I think my general response is that this would be a false dichotomy, because classically in Christian approach to literature, I mean to scripture and to thinking and reason, that there is not a contradiction there between them, and reason then is grounded in the mind of God. So the laws of reason, or whatever, however you want to characterize them, these are characteristic of God Himself.
Right.
And so God is not going to be able to make a square circle, right? Because that's
Yeah.
a contradictory notion. So if somebody is arguing, though, that the Trinity is false because it violates the laws of reason, my question is going to be, which laws of reason does it violate? And of course, the law of non-contradiction is what comes up. But in what sense is the Trinity properly understood contradictory? Well, you believe in one God, and then you believe in three gods, and the response is no. That's not the view. That's not the Trinity. The Trinity is one God with that subsists with three centers of consciousness within it.
Mm-hmm.
Each is shares the full nature of the one God, but they have three separate persons. So it's if you understand the claim of the Trinity, or the way the Trinity is characterized or defined as one God and three persons, there's no contradiction, just like there isn't one family and three members of the family. Now, that's not a parallel. That's not a parallel with the Trinity, but it is just an attempt to show that
Right.
you can have one and three together with no contradiction if the oneness is different than the threeness.
Yeah, I get that. So would you say that the general understanding would be that, since, from a theistic standpoint, all logic does ultimately derive from God, that if there were some sort of seemingly logically incoherent aspect in Christian theology, then the truth will eventually out, that since it's based in God and this is what God reveals, it will ultimately make sense that maybe it's just human error is the reason why it seems incoherent.
Well, that would be one way to go. Maybe we're misunderstanding something. Maybe there's a mystery here that classically, Christian thinkers will not say that it is a contradiction,
Right.
but there's an element of this that we don't understand. I think the hypostatic union, the idea that God becomes man in the person of Jesus, and you have the union of two natures under the one person of the Word, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. I think that is really weird. I do not think it's contradictory, but I do think it in a certain sense, it defies our ability to understand everything that's going on. So if somebody thinks that there is a teaching of Scripture that in fact defies rationality, then and let's just stipulate that in fact it does. Well, then they are misunderstanding the Scripture. Then they're misunderstanding. It's similar to what I just described about the Trinity. People who characterize the Trinity in a contradictory way are not characterizing the Trinity in a biblical way.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd be interested to see where is the contradiction that people think is resident in certain theology.
Right.
The claim, of course, for the Trinity at being contradictory. This comes up from people who don't understand the Trinity. I actually talk about this and deal with it in Street Smarts, because I'm dealing in one chapter, actually two chapters, with the person of Jesus, who He was and what He did, the person and work of Christ. These are two different categories where there are challenges that are presented, and I talk about dealing with the challenge and how to engage in dialogue to resolve the issue when you're talking with somebody else. So, if the Bible seems contradictory, then you're probably not understanding the Bible. That would be my simple response.
That makes sense, because, before asking the question, I pretty much thought the same thing would be the response, that, from a lay perspective, the Trinity does seem a bit confusing. Traditionally it's been referred to as a mystery. You find that language in like Catholic literature, but when you do go look deeping into it, you realize people have been bouncing this idea around for millennia essentially, and they've come up with some very interesting explanations for it that, of course, do make it seem ultimately logically coherent.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what one has to show is if they are making the claim of incoherence, they have to demonstrate the incoherence.
Right.
You can have a mystery that is not guilty of incoherence. Just because it's mysterious and we can't plumb the depths or understand doesn't mean it's incoherent. That is, it's contradictory. We have to look at the concepts themselves and how they're characterized. So, okay, fair enough.
Yeah, that's very good. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome, Evan. And let's see. Did we just go to a break, or do we need a break? Keep going? Okay. Oh, that's easy for you to say, Kyle. All right. You're not behind the... All right, if you say so. Should we go to number 5 there? Is that what's next? Is that okay with you? I'm trying to make you do some of the heavy lifting, Derek. Or Kyle, rather. Okay. I can't see you. All I can see is your hat. Can you give me a thumbs up? How about number 5? Is that all right? Okay. Oh, that would be Matt or Matthew in Santa Clara, California. Hello, Matthew.
Hi, Greg.
Hey.
How are you?
Good. Thank you. Celebrating today, so to speak. Maybe I'll have a cigar. That would be great. Well, I shouldn't say that on the air. Okay. Never mind. We'll see what happens later tonight. But good to talk to you. What's on your mind? Social justice, right?
Right. Well, I go to the Jesuit University up here in Santa Clara, and I am currently taking a religion course. And I was recently talking to my professor about your article, The Legend of the Social Justice Jesus.
Right.
And he made the argument that we can't know whether or not Jesus would support social justice in the way that we understand it.
Right.
Because social justice as we understand it now was not a concept when Jesus was around. And
correct.
I didn't know how or whether I should respond to that.
All right. Let's see. I'm just going to try to think of a parallel. Let's see. Okay, I probably am not going to do this very good because something doesn't jump right into my mind at once. Sometimes the muse is there and bingo, I got this great thing that by parallel. Okay. The point that he's making is not relevant. Okay, simply because we have some kind of cultural activity now, which activity was not performed then. And again, I'm trying to think about, that's what I was trying to think of parallel. We don't have, it doesn't mean that Jesus would not, we don't know enough about Jesus' ethics and view of reality to know what he might think of this situation now. Okay, that's a kind of a way of responding to that. I don't know that's even relevant. But here is the deal, and this goes back to the article proper, The Legend of the Social Justice Jesus. The question is, what did Jesus come to do? And what people say is, what Jesus came to do was to help the poor and the oppressed and the marginalized in society. Okay? Now, there are particular ways that helping the poor and the oppressed and the marginalized in society are done today that would not have been done before. Certain types of welfare or food stamps. Let's just say food stamps. He didn't have food stamps then. Okay? We have food stamps now. Right. Okay, well, that's not relevant to the broader question. When people, and keep in mind, and you know this from reading the article, The Legend of the Social Justice Jesus, I am responding to claims that people are making about what Jesus was all about. So to say, well, he didn't have the social justice then like we have now, so we don't know what he would have thought, that is an argument against my critics. my critics saying this is what Jesus came to do, help the poor, the marginalized, and the oppressed, and in the best way he knew how, and we know different ways to do that now. Well, if Jesus didn't know anything about that, well, then he couldn't have been about that, right? And my point is that when we look at the things that Jesus said and those who are in a position of authority regarding understanding his purpose and his mission, like angels or people who are prophesying and stuff regarding Jesus, especially in the birth narratives, or John the Baptist, for example, okay, we know what they said about what Jesus' purpose was, and we know what Jesus said. That's all I'm doing. Okay, I hear a little clickety clacking in the background. I don't know if you're in control of that or not, but it'd be better if we didn't have that. If you can control that.
Sorry, I was taking notes.
Okay. Oh, you're probably typing. Clackety clack clack clack. Oh, you sound like Derek. Derek is doing that. What does it sound? He's clackety clack clack clacking in the other room, and I always complain. I said, "Sounds like you're." What do I sound like you're doing? What did he's doing something. It sounds like he's doing something. Like making, huh? Oh, he's spray painting. That's what it sounds like. He's shaking the bottle of spray paint on the wall. That's what it is. Okay, okay. Well, if you're typing, I'll tell you what. Listen to the recording when it comes out in a couple days, and then clickety clack them. Listen to me for the okay. So the first point I'm making is we don't know what Jesus would have thought of social justice because what we have now is not what he had then. Okay, if that's true, then Jesus could not have been a social justice warrior in the sense that we think now. In other words, my point in the article is accurate. It's a legend that Jesus was a social justice warrior. Okay, taking you get that point. Okay, so that's suicide tactic. That guy sinks his own boat. Oh, we don't know. Well, then you can't claim. But we do know what Jesus said his purpose was. And he didn't say his purpose was to help the culturally oppressed, to help the financially poor, or to help those who have been marginalized. We know that he was willing to engage marginalized people that others were not willing to engage. But that doesn't mean he campaigned for them and their circumstances. He did not. He was open to everybody, and he campaigned for something else. I came to seek and to save that which was lost. It is not the righteous who need me, but I've come to call sinners to repentance. Those are just two examples, but I found every single one in the Gospels that said anything about why Jesus came, and that would be the authoritative spiritual voices like the angels or prophetic voices like Zechariah or John the Baptist or Anna or the other guy there, when Jesus was dedicated, whatever his name is. They all said something in particular, and they said the same thing that Jesus said. So it's clear from the corpus of the witness of the Gospels, from both Jesus and others, that he had a very peculiar mission that was nothing like the mission that people attribute to him now, that he was campaigning and championing the cause of the poor and the outcast and the oppressed. He does use the word oppressed there, but Peter says he was freeing people who are oppressed by the devil. Okay?
Right.
And he never took on any of the circumstances of government or anything like that. Like, look at you guys, your government. He did go after hypocritical Jewish leaders, but on moral grounds, not on behalf of the poor. And he had, most of the time when he talked about the poor, he was using his reference to the poor as a springboard to teach something else. Look at that poor woman. She's giving the widow's mite. She gave everything. She's giving more than these other people. Well, that isn't campaigning for the poor. It's making a different spiritual point. Okay, a proportionality in giving, and hers was greater than the people who gave more. He said, blessed are the poor in spirit in the Sermon on the Mount. That's a whole different thing than those who are poor. The poor have the gospel preached to them. Wait a minute. Where did he gather up poor people, financially poor, and speak just to them? he spoke to everybody. He spoke in the hills. He spoke in synagogues. He spoke in the Temple Mount. He spoke everywhere to everybody, not just to the financially poor. So it's clear there's nothing really about the life of Jesus that fits this model. Therefore, the person who makes this particular point, this professor, it's irrelevant, the point he's making. There were a poor at that time. There were oppressed people, and the Old Testament has things to say about the poor. And since the poor are vulnerable, he says, don't oppress them. They're easy to oppress by people with power. Don't do that. Oppression is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That's the Old Testament. I'm not saying that means it's old. I mean, that's the voice of the Old Testament and prophets. That wasn't the voice of Jesus. That wasn't what Jesus came to do. He came to do something else. That's my whole point. And what I don't want to do is relegate Jesus to a social justice warrior of some sort, and therefore detract or diminish or destroy the actual reason that he said he came. And notice that in the Gospel of John, there is only one single solitary reference to the poor, and it's when Jesus says, the poor you always have with you. That is, it was dismissive of the poor in comparison to something else, and that something else was him being anointed for burial. So It's all there, and if people want to read the piece, it's on our website, The Legend of the Social Justice Jesus. So does that help you with the challenge?
Yeah, that definitely helps.
Okie dokie. Yes.
If you have the time.
Well, I have another caller online here. I got 8 more minutes to go, so I need to go to the other caller. But hold on, I'll put you on hold because hold on just a minute. Don't go away. I think Amy wants to talk to you, so I'm going to try to put you on hold. Okay.
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 Thank you, Greg.
Yeah, you're welcome, brother. Yeah, did that work? It did work. Okay, let's go to Carly in Augusta, Georgia. Carly, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so I just had a question about 1 Corinthians 5:11.
Okay.
When it talks about how we are not even to eat with another brother who engages in
yeah.
And I was wondering if that applies to like parents maybe not associating with their children who have maybe come out as gay or something like that.
Okay.
I'm speaking kind of generally for anonymity purposes of someone that I know.
Yeah, right now, of course, there are lots of challenging circumstances, especially with the preponderance of gay or same-sex relationships that we see flourishing in our culture and the promotion of them. And then you're going to get a lot of Christian parents or family members who have family members that are now pursuing this direction. And what it says here in chapter 5, verse 11, this is for the other listeners. Actually, I wrote to you not to associate with any so-called brother if he is an immoral person or covetous or an idolater, a reviler, a drunkard, swindler, not even to eat with one. And of course, he was just talking about sexual sin above there, and they were kind of going along with it, like they're being, why aren't you mourning instead of being so, quote unquote, tolerant of that? And so the question then is, how does this apply now? And your question in specific is somebody's daughter who claims to be a Christian and is in a same-sex relationship. Is that right?
Yeah, they've just come out as gay, or but I don't know that they're in a relationship. But yeah, they've come out as gay. They're professing Christian, but yeah, they've come out as gay. And so, like, how would the parent apply this verse?
Okay, so just so I'm clear, their daughter has come out as gay. Is that what you said, or as a lesbian?
Correct.
Okay, and she still claims to be a Christian.
Correct.
Okay, fine. I have no problem with that. Christopher Ewan is a close friend of mine, and Christopher is a Christian who has same-sex attraction, but he is living a godly celibate life. Just like a single person may have raging heterosexual attraction, but brings that under the lordship of Christ. That's what Christians do. So if your friend or the daughter in this case is is Christian, struggling with same-sex attraction and living a holy life, like Christopher Ewan, and he's written books about. In fact, he has a book. Doesn't Christopher have a book about holy living or something? Holy sexuality, is that it? Okay, yeah. His second book, his first one was about his own testimony out of a far country and his holy sexuality. You also have somebody like, okay, Amy, is it Rosaria or Rosaria? Rosaria. Oh, gosh. There's only about 10 ways to say that name, and I get it wrong every time. Rosaria Butterfield. And she's written a number of books, but she also came out of a lesbian relationship, very aggressive, and became a Christian. And I actually think she's married and with children now, so maybe there was some adjustment in her own sexual attractions. Nevertheless, the point is her commitment, just like Christopher and a number of others, that as a follower of Christ, regardless of your sexual appetites, you're going to live a holy life. Now,
Right.
if this is what the daughter's view is, then there's no problem. And there's a challenge there, obviously, for her, and it's our job as, friends and family members, to be encouraging and supporting to her. But she is not condemned simply in virtue of having same-sex attraction. It is the way we deal with our sinful impulses that's important.
Right. So she actually, to clarify earlier, is not, she's like a professing Christian, but she's not living a godly, she's not like, oh, I'm just struggling with same-sex attraction. She is like, this is okay. Like homosexuality is okay in God's eyes.
Okay. So now, then I have another verse that's important for her, and it's in the very next chapter of the same book. It's in chapter 6, and I'm going to read this, and I'm going to read the, a couple of verses here, and note that there's a mixture of sins that Paul is saying are inconsistent with being a member of the kingdom of God. But note the sexual sins. There's a bunch of, I'll read the whole thing. Verse 9, chapter 6, 1 Corinthians. And it's interesting, the wording. Or do you not know? Wait a minute. People, Corinthians, don't you know this? That the unrighteous will not inherit the kingdom of God. Oh, well, who's that? Do not be deceived, neither fornicators. Now, that hits at home for a lot of young people right now. And I said this in a church environment last weekend. Here's what it says. This is God's standard. Neither fornicators, nor idolaters, nor adulterers. Notice it starts with the heterosexual sins sexually there, fornication, adultery, nor effeminate, nor homosexuals. Arsenokoites is the Greek word there. Men betting men, men betters. Nor thieves, nor the covetous, nor the drunkards, nor the revilers, nor swindlers will inherit the kingdom of God. Now, if so, what this means to me, in other words, the way I apply the fairly clear statement, unambiguous statement of Paul, is that if a person is openly living a homosexual life, they are not Christian.
Right. Okay.
And therefore they wouldn't be falling underneath this criteria, although Paul does say in chapter 5, any so-called brother who is living like that. And I think another factor that has to come into play here is the familial relationship. It's not just like some other brother in the church. It's a member of your own family. And at least I think that makes a difference. All right. So what you don't do is you don't say, okay, you're not a member of our family anymore because you're not living the way you're supposed to as a Christian.
Yeah.
My take on Paul's comments in 1 Corinthians 6, 9, and 10 is that she's not a Christian, and it's evident by her lifestyle. Now, if she wants to deny that, no, I really am a Christian. I love Jesus. Okay, then you follow him.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and you don't do the things that I say? But now,
Yeah.
having said that, I mean, that's the theology. Working this out in relationship, in families especially, is sometimes very difficult. There's a tremendous hardship here for the parents that are involved, and so you want to have a gentle touch trying to manage these things. So,
Okay.
Carly, there's my music, so we're out. But does that help you?
Yes, thank you so much.
All right, Carly. I appreciate your call. That's it, friends, for Stand to Reason today. Greg Kokel here on our 30th anniversary shows. The last two this week. Give them heaven. Bye-bye.